Once you go startup, there's no going back.
Yeah.
Even if you end up resorting to a corporate role later in your life, you in some shape or form continue that relationship with startups. You're either an investor or you're either an advisor.
Welcome everyone to the TechGuide podcast, where we give actual advice to those wanting to break into tech or are looking for their next gig. We have Ceylan Ersoy on the podcast today to talk about social media, marketing, startups. She's a creator resident at VaynerMedia and is a co-managing partner / CMO at Before Sunset. Super excited to talk with you about marketing, startups, and all things what's going on in Ceylan's world. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We got to start with your story, though. Kind of give the basis about where you come from, a little bit more about like who you are, because you grew up in Turkey. You came here in 2016. So take me back to like 2016 and coming over to the United States from Turkey. How did that kind of happen? How did that spur? And what was that like?
Yes, would love to give you the rundown. So first of all, coming to America, for some reason, ever since I was growing up, was the number one priority for me. I don't know if it was the influence of Hollywood, if it was American movies. I just knew in my head that I would go to study college in America. I don't know why. Like, I had never been to America up until freshman year of high school. And when I went there, I didn't like it. I came to New York. I felt it was really dirty, but still somehow the idea of going to college in America was just like a big dream for me. And then I applied only exclusively to American schools, got into Berkeley, and I was lucky enough to go there in 2016. It was an amazing experience. Berkeley is really infamous for a lot of things. One of them is how many startups come out of it. I think it's maybe the number one or top 5 universities that create the most startup founders. And a big reason of that is because Berkeley has a lot of room for innovation, has a lot of very smart people, but a lot of challenges. And startup life is ingrained with so many challenges, and Berkeley people are used to that. So that's what kind of started out my kind of leaning towards the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the startup world. It also helped that it was next to the Silicon Valley. So that was also a big impact for me. So that was the initial journey into it. I graduated 2020. The pandemic was in full force when that was happening. Went back to Turkey for a little bit, and I always wanted to pursue something in media because I studied psychology. I wanted to do something that touched people, and particularly learning about their stories, learning about how to tell those stories in media. And then I had a couple of media experiences, worked with Harvard Business Review for a bit in Turkey, worked with NBC in Bay Area as an intern, kind of took that route initially and really wanted to pursue something in social media. So my life right now is 2 parallels. One of them is the side of me that is pursuing media and social media, digital media. But the other side of the spectrum is my entrepreneurial side that's pursuing startups. And in startups, that social media passion kind of translates to managing their media, managing their overall branding and stance, and also their marketing efforts. So currently, after 4 years after graduation almost, which is wild to say, I can't believe it's been 4 years, I am a co-founder in a startup called Before Sunset AI, and I lead their marketing operations and media operations. And I'm a creator resident in VaynerMedia, which is a leading advertising and brand agency.
Yeah, you are crushing it on all cylinders. But for this podcast particularly, I want to focus on a little bit more of the startups. And I want to go back to going to UC Berkeley and getting into like entrepreneurship. Did you know when you were coming here in 2016 that like you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And that's kind of what made you choose UC Berkeley? Or was it more like you got to UC Berkeley and you understood the entrepreneurship like journey and like startups and all that? Or take me back to like that specific moment where you decided that. That's
a really good question. And it's definitely not something that I had originally planned on doing. It's more something that I kind of found my way into. Being an entrepreneur is not necessarily someone's childhood dream, because when we were growing up, that wasn't really a thing. Both of my parents were in corporate life, and both of them wanted that for me because of the stability of it all, because of the structure that imposed. Like corporate life is kind of an extension of school, because you kind of know where you're going with. The steps are pretty clear. The stability is there. The expectations are there. Startup world, not so much. It's super unexpected. There's no clear road to success. So that's not something that I originally planned on doing. But being in Berkeley and being surrounded by so many people who had a great startup idea, who were already working on their startup idea, who had already gained funding from like Skydeck or one of the other accelerators around, I wanted to venture into it and just experiment with it. And it was a great place to do so. So I found this, being Turkish, I found a startup accelerator that was being started in the Valley that summer by Turkish investors. And I ended up reaching out to them, wanted to be an intern there. And then for that summer, I was an intern in this accelerator, working with startups, trying to like help them out in their marketing, in their branding, in just growing in America. And that gave me an amazing exposure into the industry initially. And so that's how I got started with it.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to ask that. Like, talk to me about like how that growth happened when you get this role. Because once you're working with startups, it is like you have exposure to leadership, you have exposure to every decision that's being made. I think that's super cool for someone that's young in their career that wants to have ownership of work or whatnot. But take me to like what that growth meant for you to be exposed to all these startups. Yeah, just kind of take me to that moment of just like the growth that you saw that summer working with this company.
The way I like to explain it is once you go startup, there's no going back. Yeah. Even if you end up resorting to a corporate role later in your life, you in some shape or form continue that relationship with startups. You're either an investor or you're either an advisor. It's something that like once I got started with that startup world, I always had a relationship and more things kept coming up because there's so many opportunities in startups if you are open to those opportunities. So the way it happened was all throughout that summer, I was working alongside, I think, 8 to 10 startups that were trying to get a grounding in America, trying to go global with it. And then what happened was after that internship was over, they all stayed in touch with me and I stayed in touch with them. And the more opportunities came for those startups, for freelance opportunities, for part-time opportunities, I always took them. I was constantly taking on new part-time gigs for myself, which at one point, I think I was working with 10 startups part-time, which was insane when I told people. Crazy. But it's something that was like quite exciting. There was so much room for growth. And that is why when younger people come to me for advice about like how to kick off their careers, I always say, find a startup where you can intern, where you can take a freelance job or a part-time gig, and that will get you started. It will give you more clarity on what you don't want to do and want to do. And it will also give you such an amazing network to start tapping into and growing.
Yeah, that's advice that I give to people as well. When they come to me, they're like, what should I do? Like when I'm young in my career, I always say, find a small company to work for and work as closely to like the CEO or the COO as possible, because you're going to be exposed to like how a high performer like performs. Maybe they're not all high performers, but in general, like a lot of CEOs, like they know how to push. So I always advise that as well, as try to get so much exposure to the C-suite as possible when you're young in your career, similar to like what you said.
I think also something to add there is finding mentors within startups is much, much easier than finding mentors in a bigger company because you get more access to them, simply because you get more access to the people who are higher up within the company and they're more willing to help invest in your growth. That's essentially one of the lucky reasons why I'm here today. And I continue to work with startups is within that internship where I was within the accelerator, I found mentors that were willing to become my mentors and also willing to invest in me, connect me with their new network connections. Like a new startup is being founded. Oh, here's Ceylan, who is really good with media and marketing if you need anything there. Like I think off the top of my head, at least 10 of these part-time gigs was referred to me through one person who I can call out is an advisor at Before Sunset right now, Chidam Toraman, who is also an investor. She's an amazing person, an amazing mentor.
Yeah, I feel like the best way to like get to find jobs is through referrals. We hear that like a ton on the podcast. But I also want to talk about Before Sunset as well. Let's kind of transition to like what you guys are actually doing. Can you give us like a brief overview of like what Before Sunset is and how like you're co-managing partner here and like the CMO there?
Yes. So the way it started was also quite unexpected, as is many things with the startup industry. So Among the startups that I was working for part-time during the pandemic was a startup that was under the umbrella of this incubator in Izmir, which is another city in Turkey.
Yeah.
And this was a university that was also serving as an incubator to startups that were being founded outside of the university. And so while working part-time with that startup, I started gaining exposure to the other startups that were being founded within this incubator ecosystem. And at one point, another person within the incubator came to me and kind of pitched me before sunset. And immediately it really resonated with me because the pitch was this. You are probably exposed to so many productivity tools, so many task management tools, scheduling tools, because you're working with so many startups. Do you like any of them, or have you continued using any of them after 1 week? And I was like, definitely not. I have become so overwhelmed with productivity tools, planning tools, that I have resorted to the pen and paper method. I've become my parents and I need to note down everything on a physical notepad. And it's actually very unfortunate because with technology developing, sometimes it's overwhelming us to the point where we're trying to get away from technology, but that's not the way innovation and progress happens. And it's unfortunate. And because I studied psychology, I like tying it back to psychology. And there's this thing called software fatigue. And as well as within softwares, there's a thing called future fatigue. And a lot of platforms nowadays, because there's so many competition, are resorting to continuously adding new features onto their platforms to the point where users are feeling overwhelmed and then doing a rage quit of, I'm not going to use anything. And so me along with my co-founders, decided that this was not supposed to be what was happening, and the future of work needed to be more human and technology in the benefit of the human. So we started building Before Sunset to be a tool that could assist in taking things off of people's plates rather than adding on to it, and helping them achieve work days or personal days that really effectively worked for them.
I love that. And to talk about how much people love it, you guys are number one on Product Hunt, number one product of the month on Product Hunt, number one product of the week on Product Hunt. So people are latching on to this. Take me to the early days of this then. So how did you guys get your first users? I just want people that want to start a company someday, what are this is hard. It is not easy getting your first customer. It's really, really hard. But how did Before Sunset do it, and how did you lead that initiative?
Initially, when we were starting out, the idea hadn't matured enough to become a full-fledged daily planning platform. Initially, it was more of a time management platform. And it was something that we had already built with our internal team. And it was something we as a team were using, and we were asking around in the incubator for the other startups within the incubator ecosystem to start using it as well. And a lot of people really liked it. And then we noticed that there was a wider gap in the market. And the main reasons why we noticed that was through the launches that we did on Product Hunt. The initial launch of the platform was as a time management and time tracking platform. And we got a lot of people coming onto the platform through the success of that Product Hunt launch, for which we did a lot of community management effort, a lot of marketing effort went into it. But it was essentially coming out of a team of 5 who were reaching out to people, doing cold outreaches, doing LinkedIn outreach, doing Product Hunt outreach. So it was a lot of man hours put into the Product Hunt launch itself. But because the launch was a success, we got so many eyes on the platform and so much valuable feedback, which prompted us to pivot the platform into a daily planning platform, and what eventually became Before Sunset and what it is today. And so the general journey was, we had an idea, we tested it out, we did a launch around it, we got the feedback, we created the idea that would actually be the company, and then simultaneously started building out the platform, the product roadmap, and also started putting in efforts into the building the community, the marketing. We were lucky enough that we were able to sell the idea to an initial batch of angel investors, and that gave us some time to focus on the product as well as building the power user community that would help us build the product in the right way, that would tier to their needs and challenges. And then that entire year after its foundation was fully dedicated to doing that. And now we've come to a point where we're at 27,000 plus users. We've come to past the threshold of 1,000 paying users, which is amazing. Nice. And we just recently had our first VC investment from Trio VC, which was super, super exciting. So now we've had that initial traction. We've shown that there's a gap in the market, that people are really excited about the product. And now it's all going to be about creating an optimized sales funnel. We connect to the right audiences. We connect to the right B2B audiences particularly, and focus fully on growth and product market fit.
I love that. Someone might be thinking, holy smokes, this chick is a stud, and they would be right. Because you guys have been doing this now for 2 years, based on like the LinkedIn, March 2022. So 2-year anniversary or whatnot. I'm curious, the early days of this personally, when you launched this compared to like where you are now, what the growth I'm sure is like exponential that you've seen, but can you talk to that a little bit as well? Because some people, when you get started in a startup, you're going to have no idea what is going on. Like you have no product market fit, you don't have a paying customer, but can you talk about the growth that you've seen personally from like a mindset perspective, professional development perspective over the past 2 years here?
I think the biggest challenge for me personally was not having a clear picture as to what success was supposed to look like, as well as a clear picture as to what I was supposed to be doing on the day to day. And I channeled all that anxiety into the product because I was like, this is something that everybody's experiencing. A lot of people are learning the job on the job. A lot of people aren't really sure what their day to day is supposed to look like. And the solution is that you can rely on AI, you can rely on other people who has had similar experiences, you can rely on your personal data to really create a roadmap for yourself that can lead to success. So a lot of it for me personally has been channeling those challenges into how can we build a product that really resolves that challenges for other people who are experiencing similar things. But on a personal level, surrounding myself with people who might be having similar challenges to see how they handled it. For this and for startups, this is why an advisory board is a must, because these are people, even if they haven't been in the same industry as you, these are people who have experienced similar challenges as you. Try to create a very colorful advisory board for yourself. Someone from the software engineering side, someone from the marketing side, someone who has never worked with startups before and fully comes from the corporate side, and someone who has been in the startup world for a while, so that all of those different perspectives can feed into creating a roadmap for yourself that is a little bit more tangible.
That's interesting. I feel like at like a young age, having an advisory board for a startup is like paramount to success, because like relatively, like we're both very young, and like I feel like having people that have 15-20 years of experience can kind of help shine some light on like those blind spots you might have when like trying to build a company. And
that doesn't necessarily even have to be advisors. It can even come from your friends and family. And for me, my family has been a big support throughout all of this, because even though they both come from corporate backgrounds, they are very seasoned in so many different domains that still apply to startup life, that I usually turn to them when I'm running into challenges. If not my family, then my peers. I have, being from Berkeley, so many people who, even if they're not founders, they work in startups. They know the challenges. They know the rewards that come with it. So really creating a network around yourself that will help you navigate these roadblocks and also celebrate your mini victories with you, noticing that they're actually huge victories for you and your startup is huge.
Yeah, I remember I was so South by Southwest here like 2 weeks ago in Austin. And I remember I was speaking to someone that just launched like some sort of like consulting thing. And he just got his first client. I was like so excited for him. I was like, oh my God, like that is like such big news. And he was like taken back that someone was like so excited like for him. But like, as you know, from a startup, your first paying customer, once you get someone that actually pays for your product, it is like a mind like explosion of like what actually happens and like what you can do.
Definitely. And I think what's also super motivating in those kind of moments is having a team that is going to hype up your energy rather than bring you down. What we have been super valuable for us as we were building before Sunset was really having initial team members that felt as if they were co-founders throughout the process.
That's like huge.
Every single initial employee that we onboarded has acted with so much ownership for the platform and the business that we always felt that we were like just equals within the same ecosystem, and like we were all building towards the same thing. The energy they brought has been amazing. I talked a little bit about our product hunt success, and the big reason behind that is the team that was willing to pull an all-nighter, sleep in the office that day, reaching out, doing cold outreaches to people, even though maybe 1 in 100 is going to respond. They were still reaching out to people, hyping each other up. Even And the initial product hunt launch, I was in America and everybody else was in Turkey. I was having so much FOMO from missing that all-nighter that it's really like, I think even if it's not for a startup, this goes for everybody. Your job is going to be a big majority of your life. Throughout your life, like your career is going to take up so much.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to love who you work with. You have to. It's like maybe the biggest decision you can make after picking your significant other. Like it's who you're going to be surrounding yourself every day with. And you got to like these people.
Yeah. I echo that so much. And I like the advice that you said of like, find people that they might not be co-founders, but they're going to operate with like a co-founder mentality. I feel like that is so huge. I'm curious specifically on that though. Hiring, like how did you guys successfully vet out candidates that you knew would operate with like this co-founder mentality? What were some of the techniques you use, or like, how did you do it successfully?
So there was a lot of trial and error that went into it. What I always like doing is, like I said, I always recommend to people to pursue internships, part-time freelance gigs with startups. And that's essentially what we offered. We, for every single department, we opened up internship posts and we onboarded exorbitant amounts of people as interns. That was super unnecessary. Like there wasn't that much job to be done when we onboarded 6 marketing interns. We didn't even have a social media platform for them to run, but that's why we hired them so that they could be proactive. We could observe if they were being proactive, if they were bringing more to the table than was being asked, etc. So these internships have definitely created a very optimized like hiring funnel for us. And a lot of those people from those internships are still with us to this day. One of them is leading the marketing team actually under me. And it's amazing. She was an intern and we've like seen her grow and flourish into becoming a marketing manager. So a lot of that hiring came from those internships. But on top of that, we were really lucky enough to be in the ecosystem of this incubator. So within this incubator, there's a lot of people being kind of not thrown around, but passed around as in like they get promoted to another startup and they get promoted to another one. So it was really lucky to have like access to this pool of very talented and smart people. And it was just a matter of like the right opportunity, the right time, the right person. So we would have a job posting. We would see who would come in from the incubator, kind of prioritize the people within the incubator a little bit, and also prioritize people who could come into the office in Izmir because a lot of it can also be built in person. Me being in New York, is unfortunate for this, but it helps with our global expansion efforts 100%. But the rest, for example, the development team is fully based in Turkey, and that's kind of creating that kind of culture in person is also very helpful.
That is like so big. And I feel like startups, like hiring, for me, it was honestly one of the most unexpected challenges. Like I did not know how hard it was to interview 20 people, and like, you're just like, well, I feel like confident about like some, and like some I feel really good about, but it's like, how do you actually know who's going to be proactive? What we did is like, we looked for like entrepreneurial mindset. Like, do you want to be an entrepreneur? All that good stuff. That was a big one we looked for. But like, to your point, like it's hard and you need to find people that are going to operate with a co-founder's mentality.
What's really hard also is I'm a people's person. My default when I meet people is that I'm going to like them. It takes a lot for me to be critical of people or like not like people. But then you also have to be realistic with these kind of hiring processes, because sometimes you're going to want to like people, but they will throw challenges at you to like them. And one of the experiences we had while we were running these internships where we had interns who literally ghosted us in the middle of the internship. Some people who felt they were above this internship, some people who were like kind of coming to meetings with a mentality of, oh, I'm better than you. And it's just like, you have to be cautious when you're doing these kind of hirings. Sometimes like a person's CV is going to look great on paper. You meet them, it's not the right fit for this company. So it's going to have to be a kind of dual effort of, are they capable? Do they like bring to the table what we need? But also, are they good people that we want to spend our days with?
Yeah, that's what I feel like is the biggest thing for a startup too, especially when it's a smaller team, is like, do I actually like this person? Because you're interacting with them so often, it's finding that right fit. And like, to your point as well, I know when we were hiring, we had some people on a cover letter that like, they worked at like S&P, like 500 and like Citibank and all this stuff. So they looked incredible, but you get on an interview and you're like, I don't know if we want to actually hire you. It's super interesting.
But it definitely is. And I think And even when I was like not a part of like a co-founding team, even when I was looking for a job myself, this is something that I really do prioritize during the interview processes for companies. Like, am I enjoying these conversations that I'm having with these people? I know like I'm trying to get a job here, but is this a place where I also want to invest my time? Because again, like this job is going to take up so much of my time. Like, am I going to be able to learn? Am I going to be able to grow? I think one of the key things that I always tell people who also come to me for advice for like finding a job is like, before applying to something that sounds like an amazing job at a top company or a top firm, do you even want to do this on your day to day? Like, do you want to do it? Like, narrow it down. Like, ask yourself, prioritize yourself first for this.
Yeah. And I feel like that comes back to like experience too. Like if you're pretty young in your career, you might not even know what you want to do, but like you have to like really be honest with yourself. Like, do I want to make 25 cold calls a day to somebody? Do I actually want to do that? Or do I want to like be behind the computer? So I feel like it's like a balance of like, what do I want to do? And like, what am I actually good at?
Definitely a big thing there though is like to remember that your first couple of jobs is not going to be the ideal like dream job for you 100%. Like if it is amazing, kudos to you, you're super lucky.
Correct.
But at the same time, it's important because I'm seeing this so much in my generation where a lot of people are getting super disappointed with their first jobs because it's not what they dreamed it was going to be. But it's not going to be. It's like, it's a matter of finding the right fit for yourself. You might imagine yourself really loving something, and once it comes down to it, you don't necessarily like it. So it's about like the first couple of years within your career, I feel like is where you do a trial and error, and especially focus on what you don't like doing. Like, this is not what I don't like doing. So it's like, let's get rid of these kind of job titles and these kind of like job responsibilities and focus on this. Yeah.
How did you know? I mean, someone might be listening. It's like, how do I know if I liked it? Like, how did you know you liked marketing so much? You're obviously like a CMO now. So how did you know you liked marketing?
It was a lot of trial and error for me as well, by the way, because marketing is a very big word. There's so many different domains that fall into it. Like I might have hated a specific marketing job, but could have loved another marketing job. So I think the process for me was like this. I studied psychology. I minored in theater. And what I got from those majors and minor situation was a couple of things. I liked doing stuff that had to do with people. I liked telling stories about people because of the theater minor. And I liked to be the person who was voicing those as an actor or a director, kind of like visualizing or creating a physical product that was out there. And so for me, that kind of opened up a couple different channels of careers. One of them was journalism, which I was initially experimenting with a little bit through my internships, etc. I loved being on camera, doing storytelling for people, uncovering stories. And then after joining some startups, doing some internships there, I also realized that a really big opportunity lies in storytelling for brands and companies as well. It's a lot of businesses are trying to find relevance, trying to build awareness through creating an identity and story for themselves in media. And so I found that so exciting because I think there's so many different creative directions you can take with it. And also so many positive impact that you can create through these kind of storytellings, finding a product that can really solve a significant challenge for a person, or telling a story that resonates with a certain person. So I think the creativity really inspired me. The human element of it really inspired me. The versatility, the constant change within media and marketing really excited me. So those were the things that excited me and felt I was good at. And that kind of pushed me in that direction.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big thing, and especially when it comes to marketing, is like being a good storyteller. And I feel like a major psychology and a minor in like film, whatnot, is like huge for that. Just because at the end of the day, marketing is storytelling, and you need to incorporate that within everything you do in marketing.
Definitely, it's a lot of storytelling. It's a lot of creativity. It's a lot of talking to people and understanding either what they need or what they want communicated. And also, in the end of the day, it's also a good understanding of what's being needed. There's a really fine line in marketing that is being fake versus telling an authentic story. So striking that balance is also very critical. And that comes from really understanding the human perspective in these kind of stories.
Yeah. Can you tell us about like a successful marketing initiative you've done at Before Sunset, without spilling too much of the playbook here, but like a little bit of like a successful story you guys have done at Before Sunset when it comes to marketing?
I think the biggest thing that we're doing successfully in marketing is letting our users' feedback lead the marketing efforts. So usually, especially initially when we were trying to pitch Before Sunset to people who were so done with trying out another productivity tool, another planning tool, we kind of let our reviews speak for ourselves and kind of showcasing, look, people still need these tools. And when they try and experiment with it, it works for them. It actually helps them. A lot of people challenge us by saying, but there are so many big players in this industry. Like, how are you going to compete? And then we went back to them by saying, but why are they then churning after a week? Why are they like stopping to use these big names after a week of use? And like, why is there still so many people on the internet still looking for a solution for this? It was combined by our research into the industry, talking to people, doing customer discovery interviews, really learning what was happening out there in the industry. And then after rolling out the platform, listening to their feedback, listening to what they were saying. And that research, that talking to people, doing those interviews have led into our copy on our website, our pitch deck on our investor deck. Like everything that we've done in the marketing efforts avenue has been fed by those insights.
I love that. And the insights are awesome. You guys have a great website. So everyone, if you are listening, definitely go check it out. Ceylan, you were the best. Thank you so much for being here today. Please plug where people can find you, where people can find Before Sunset. Please plug everything that you have done.
Yeah. As I was telling you earlier, I think everybody should just give it a go at beforesunset.ai, and it's free for use. You can upgrade to Pro if you want to, not pushing you to do anything specific, but
just give it a try.
Just give it a try. Take it out for a ride. You can follow us on all social media platforms. Follow me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me if you want to ask me any questions about my journey or anything else. I would love to help.
Awesome. Ceylan, thank you so much for being here today. Great conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan.